Hello everyone, I'm excited to be here with you today. I've got some really lovely finished objects to share with you, including my finished Copenhagen cardigan that I knitted for my mum's birthday and a couple of pairs of socks. Also, my tempo tank is ready and it's coming out next week. I have also got a fair few whips to show you, I think all of which you have not seen, including a brand new design that I am knitting up, my Murmur pullover, and I've also got a pie camisole on the go. Plus I'm going to be chatting more about a upcoming test knit that I will be calling out for test knitters for my Grow Grain slipover, so stay tuned to hear more about that. So in case we haven't met before, my name is Clare Mountain-Manipon. I am the knitting pattern designer and the teacher behind Sister Mountain. I release my own self-published knitting patterns, and I also teach other knitters how to do the same inside of my online course Sweater Design School. I live here in London, England with my lovely husband Ulysses and a toddler, I was going to say baby, a toddler, definitely a toddler now, he's just turned 3, called Nico. And on this channel I do, typical podcast format videos, but I also create videos all about knitting pattern design. So if you are a knitter that maybe wants to branch out into making your own patterns, then stick around because I do teach on that as well. So let's start with finished objects. As I mentioned earlier, I am wearing my finished tempo tank. This is the second sample that I've made, and this is a brand new design that I will be releasing next Tuesday, the 25th of June, and I'm just so delighted to finally share this pattern with you. My first sample I knitted up in BC Garn Summer in Cashmere. It's a sport weight yarn, very summer friendly, but it has a little bit of cashmere in there, which makes it really soft to the touch, drapey, it's lovely. This is slightly different. I knitted this sample in the same size, but a different yarn. So I used Drops Safran in the colour Sage Green, and I used, rather than doing the I-cord trim, I used the other trim option, which is the rolled edge, and you can see here that you get a really lovely finish over the armholes and around the neck. So knitters can have the option of either going for an I-cord finishing around the edges, or they can go for something like this with the rolled edge. Both of my samples are knitted in a size 3, which gives me about 6 centimeters, 3 inches of positive ease around the bust, which is lovely to give you that kind of airy feeling that you want in summer. I expected my previous sample to be my favorite just because it was kind of the first ideation of the design, and that frequently becomes my favorite sample, but in this case I think this might be my favorite. I love the rolled edges. I actually find that it kind of fights the natural tendency of the fabric to want to curl at the edges of the straps because it's stockinette, so that's nice. But also I really love Drops Safran. This yarn is incredibly affordable, and so this entire project, including shipping, I think cost me less than £10. I can't remember exactly how much off the top of my head, but including shipping plus the yarn, it was considerably less than £10, I believe. The yarn was on sale when I bought it, but even at full price, I think it's about £1.30. 50 gram ball, and you get 160 meters in there, so you get a lot for your money. It comes in a really wide range of sizes, and what I like about this yarn is very soft. Actually, it has lovely drape, but there is a certain amount of structure compared to the Summer in Cashmere yarn. So depending on the type of look that you're going for, maybe the vibe of the outfit that you're trying to create, you can kind of use the pattern for different feels. So for me, this is a bit more structured. Maybe I want to wear it with something that has a bit more drape and a bit more fluidity to it. I'm currently wearing it with kind of a pleated slip style skirt, so it has that kind of contrast. With my more drapier top, I might want to wear it with a slightly more structured bottoms, but what I really love about this pattern is that you can kind of choose a yarn that creates the type of mood that you are, I guess, trying to achieve. So 2 different yarns, 2 different colours, and a really different feel to the finished piece, whether that's feel, you know, tactile feel, because it does have a different feel, but also just the kind of the structure and the vibe of the piece. So yeah, super pleased with it. I can see myself making many of these. I've done, you know, I've done a bright pink, it's kind of like a raspberry pink for the first sample. This one, I mean, they call it sage green. I wouldn't personally call it sage green. It's got a bit more punch to it than what I would typically think of as sage green, but I'm thinking for maybe my next one, I'm going to go for something that is slightly more neutral. I'm thinking maybe even like a chocolate brown, I think would be lovely in this type of silhouette. And I am thinking maybe I want to experiment with the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, because although this is knitted with a sport weight yarn, it creates a really nice, I did it at like a fine gauge to create quite a, I don't know, I didn't want the fabric to feel too holey, so I knitted it at quite a fine gauge compared to what you would expect for a sport weight, which does have the advantage of being able to use a fingering weight yarn in substitutions as well. So there is that option. So I am thinking about the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, and maybe going for like a chocolatey brown colour, just again to create a different feel, because if you are going to have the same piece in your wardrobe, then, you know, it's nice to make sure that the overall look of it and feel of it, and maybe the way that you would wear it, is different. Otherwise it can feel a bit samey. So yeah, I'm thinking chocolate brown silk. What do you think? I think it's going to be amazing. Very luxurious feeling. So yeah, I'm super pleased with how this turned out, and I really am so looking forward to seeing what you guys make of it, what colours you choose, what yarns you choose. Like I said, it will be coming out on Tuesday the 25th of June, so not long now. Just to give you a bit of a heads up about the construction, it's knitted from the top down, so you may be familiar with the kind of the method where you essentially cast on at the back neck and then you increase at the edges of that back neck, just to kind of create the additional width that you need in order to get the width of shoulders that you want. So you're making increases every row. And then you'll just work the shoulders down, do some armhole shaping at the bottom, and then put that on hold. Then what you're doing is you're picking up for the front shoulders from those increased sections and working your front neck shaping. You're working, you know, the chest part straight, and then you're going to be doing those underarm cast-ons underarm shaping and underarm cast-ons to join in the round. Now the body is super simple. You will be just working in the round. I did include some A-line shaping just to give that kind of loose, airy feel that I wanted to create with this top. So there is a small amount of shaping, and then you'll finish off by using a textured kind of, it's like a combination between ribbing and garter stitch, but it has a really lovely, almost I want to say kind of like embroidered or ribbony kind of feel to the edging. It has a substantial feel to it that feels, I don't know, it feels quite sophisticated and elegant. So I'm super pleased with it. And like I said, you've got 2 different options in terms of finishing. You can either go for the I-cord or the rolled hem, and you'll be able to see in the pattern photos that you've got visuals for both of those, so you can make a decision based on what you prefer, or maybe like me, you want a bit of both and make 2 samples. So yeah, that's how it's constructed, and yeah, I'm super pleased with how it is worked up, and I hope that you all have a lovely time knitting up your own versions. The next FO that I would like to share with you today is a cardigan that I've been knitting on for my mum as a birthday gift since February. Her birthday was in February. I told her that she could choose the pattern and the yarn that she wanted, and I would knit her up a birthday garment, birthday sweater. So she chose this cardigan by PetiteKnit. Like I said, it's the Copenhagen Cardigan. I will admit it has not been blocked yet. Although actually that's a half truth. So I had high hopes of blocking it a couple of days ago, and I did my whole blocking process, and then I didn't have the time to like lay it out to the measurements that I wanted on the mat. So I just kind of left it on the side, and then I forgot about it. So it has dried. It's been soaked and dried, but it hasn't. It was crumpled up, and this is probably a shameful thing to admit, but so be it. I don't have a good memory and I forgot about it. So it's now, yeah, it needs to be done again basically, but that's fine. I mean, the fabric feels lovely. I don't think it's going to need a huge amount of manipulation based on the current finished measurements, so that's nice when that happens. And yeah, I'm super pleased with how it turned out. I have to say it was really nice working on this, because normally I will make maybe like the medium size in a pattern, and this one was the extra small because my mum is a very petite lady, so it was not that much knitting. It's quite an open gauge as well, so even though I've been working on it since February, I haven't had to work on it, you know, in large chunks. It kind of works up quite quickly, so that was fun. I'm so excited to share it with her. I will be seeing her in July, so I guess that's when she's going to be in receipt of this, but I just want to get it like blocked and like looking beautiful in anticipation of that. I've done all of the weaving in. I've sewn on my buttons, which I'm so pleased with. These are, I get all of my buttons from Textile Garden. If you are ever in search of buttons, I can't recommend it enough. It just has everything you could possibly imagine and more. They use really, like, they have, you know, the classic buttons you would expect from many button retailers, but they also have quite unusual ones that you don't always see in yarn shops or haberdasheries, things like that. I really like the materials that they make they source their buttons in. These are Cirro nut buttons, which is like a tree nut. I remember when I worked in the tailors, we would do Cirro nut buttons as an alternative to horn buttons, which is a nice alternative, particularly for people who choose not to work with animal fibres and things like that, or animal resources. So having a tree nut is a nice alternative, because you do get that grain that you sometimes get in horn buttons. And just for me, I love the grain of the button. I love the colour is such a fabulous match to the yarn, and yeah, I just know my mum is going to love this, and I can't wait to see her face when I am able to give it to her. They should fit really nicely because I've made some tweaks to the lengths of things and based on her measurements. So yeah, it's the first time I've ever made her a garment. I've made her loads of accessories, but the first garment. So yeah, I just feel really excited, and yeah, I'll let you know what she thinks of it. Something I forgot to mention, this is knitted in Rowan Alpaca Classic in the shade Peacock. I've never worked with this before, and it's nice. I'm not sure if I'm like blown away by it and that I would like work with it again necessarily, but it is a nice yarn. The colour is beautiful. I'm not sure how it's gonna wear. It's one of those blown yarns, I believe, so it's a mixture of cotton and alpaca, and the cotton tubing has like alpaca fibres blown through the centre of it, I believe. So yeah, it's an interesting yarn, but I'm just not sure how it's going to hold up. We shall see, but it feels soft. I can't imagine that my mum will be sensitive to it at all, and yeah, I like it, but not like in love with it, if you get my drift. So this I am in love with yarn wise, and I never thought I would say this. These you've seen before. They're finally finished. I say finally, I've not been working on them that long, but these are another pair of broken rope socks, potentially my last because I have 3 now. This is a pattern by Summer Lee. It's in the Hello Sailor sock set, and I really like this pattern because it's so simple. The fabric looks really beautiful, and I have to say it looks amazing in this yarn. I'm in love with this yarn, and I fully intend to get more of it. This was a recommendation from my sample knitter. We were talking, I think, about maybe spin cycle yarn. I think Nikki was intending to use some spin cycle for a test knit that she was doing for me, and we just got onto the topic of I've always really admired the yarn, but I'm never sure how it's going to knit up, and I'm not really sure what to do with it, and yeah, I just, you know, wasn't sure what to make of it, and it's an expensive yarn, so I've never taken the leap to use it. And Nikki said to me, well, why don't you try out the it's Schoppel Wolle's crazy Zauberball, and it has a similar, I guess, spinning technique. I'm not a spinner, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially you have 2 plies of like gradient yarn, but then they're kind of wound plied together, and it creates these really interesting marls that kind of like move in and out of one another. I adore how these came out. The colour I used is Early Autumn, and it's like a lovely mixture of raspberry pinks. It's got some kind of deep, almost like burgundies in there. It's got brick reds, it's got yellows and mints and purples and greens. It's stunning. I just think it's a beautiful colourway. So yeah, Early Autumn. I am now thinking I'm gonna try and pick up another ball of it. I was tempted to order another ball of it online, just to kind of add to my sock yarn stash, not that I have much of it, but I think what I'm going to do is wait until I can go in person, simply because I can be a bit fussy about colour, and I want to see it in person to check that I'm happy with all of the different colours in the ball. So yeah, that will be a plan for me, but I think the next one I try will be stockinette. So we'll see how it knits up. I'm not sure if, yeah, I'm wondering if the reason why I love these so much is because of the combination of the stitch and the yarn, and you know, whether I'll have that same adoration for a stockinette sock, but yeah, we shall see. I'm gonna go for, yeah, another fun colorway, I think, because surprisingly I have actually worn these a fair amount. In fact, I had to fish these out of the laundry basket before I filmed this, because they've already had a good amount of wear. So they've been more versatile than I actually expected them to be. So I think there is room for fun socks in my wardrobe for sure. For this pair, I did the 64 stitch sock on 2.25mm needles. That's, I mean, I don't have like a go-to sock stitch count. I kind of mess around and see what works best for me given the pattern, but I do tend to knit on 2.25mm needles. I have a very tight gauge. If you've ever knitted any of my patterns, you might have realized that the needle size that I use is unexpected given the gauge. So actually a 2.25mm needle gives me a really like lovely firm fabric, nice tight gauge, but not like stiff, but great for socks, really hard wearing. So yeah, 2.25mm needle, a 64 stitch sock for this one, and really pleased with the result. Now my final FO for this episode is an unexpected one, because I actually intended to film this a couple of days ago and then it just didn't work out in terms of my schedule. So I'd actually written a fair amount of notes for this podcast, and these were still in the whip section of my podcast notes. But it just so happened that I managed to finish them yesterday. I soaked and blocked them, and look, I have a new pair of socks. Now, this yarn is a new one for me. Me and my husband took our little boy out, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, into a local area near us, where they have like a lovely little market on the weekends, and just thought it'd be fun. He loves to go on the train as well. It's like 2 stops away on the train, but for my son it's like so exciting. So yeah, we went to, it's called Herne Hill, and in Herne Hill there is a local yarn shop called Sharp Works, and I try to get there as often as I can when I need to pick up yarns that I know that they will stock. So I wanted to get some more sock yarn because I like to have a pair of socks on the go at the moment, and I didn't really have anything left in stash, and I was fast approaching the end of those socks. So this yarn that I picked up is a Rico yarn. It's the Rico Socks Sprinkly Stripey, I think it's called, and the colorway is beige. So you can see it's got really subtle irregular stripes in there, going from like a kind of darker beige through to a lighter one, and then it has sprinkles of kind of like a, I want to say like a coral peachy kind of tone, and then it's got some grey in there, but the grey is quite like a, it's hard to put your finger on it because it almost like leans quite blue. They're really nice socks. Now these were inspired. They're not actually a, I'm not working from a pattern. I was watching the Knits podcast, and they had, they bought a book by Kate Atherley, who is like sock knitting, writing, designing genius, about custom knit socks. And I thought, you know what? I've never really applied, I've never sort of, when it comes to socks, I typically will use a needle size that I like, and then typically kind of cast on the size that seems appropriate for my own foot size, like in terms of my measurements. But I never gauge, swatch, I never like do anything to ensure that the socks are going to be like a perfect fit. So I thought, you know what, this time I am going to gauge swatch, and I'm just going to knit myself a vanilla sock and use this as an opportunity to like really nail down what is my perfect vanilla sock numbers. So when I did my gauge, I realized that my gauge, I mean, I should have known this, but my gauge is insanely small. I get, let me just double check. I'm just looking at my notes. I get, with a 2.25mm needle, I get 40 stitches by 50 rounds, which just seems a lot, right? But anyway, that's my natural gauge. I love the fabric it produces. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna use this. Now, the typical amount of negative ease that you want to apply to a sock is 10%, according to Kate Atherley. So you take I took my measurements around my ankle, the kind of, yeah, like the kind of widest part of my ankle. I took my foot length from like the tip of my heel through to the tip of my big toe, and then I measured my foot circumference around the kind of ball of my foot, like the widest area of my foot. And I wasn't surprised to see that my ankle is bigger in terms of circumference than my foot. I've got narrow feet and I've got thick ankles. Yeah, I've like inherited my mum's legs, where it's like leg and foot, there is no ankle. So we've got quite slim legs, but just there is no definition in the transition from leg to foot. So it was no surprise to me that my ankle requires more circumference in terms of measurement stitches than my foot does. But of course, when I'm knitting socks, typically I'm not adjusting my stitch count, and I thought this time I'm going to. So based on my gauge, based on my foot's measurements, I calculated that, including, you know, taking off the amount of ease that's necessary to get a good fit, I would need to cast on 84 stitches, which is a very large stitch count for me. like I said, this one was a 64 stitch sock, and it does fit, but what I have come to realize, having knitted these socks, is that my socks, as I typically knit them when I'm not worrying too much about fit, it's more of like a fun project, they have a lot of negative ease, like a lot of negative ease, whereas these have the kind of recommended amount of negative ease, and for that reason they have an 84 stitch circumference. So what I did is I did a cuff down sock. I prefer cuff down socks, to be honest. I did, I think, 14 rounds of the 1x1 rib. I think I did about 70 something rounds around the leg. The reason I did that is because I have found that typically when I follow other people's patterns, the leg is slightly shorter than I like. And what I've come to realize is that I typically like my socks to be roughly the same length as my foot. So in terms of like the measurement from here to here, I like it to be roughly the same as it is from like toe to heel. So I increased the amount of rounds that I did in my leg of my sock, and I am delighted with the length of them. It just means that if I'm wearing trousers and I have my socks on and maybe crossing my leg, like I've got one leg over the other, then I still don't get that like weird gap between my trousers and my sock. It just is consistent, and for me that just feels nice. Like I prefer that. So that was nice. And then when I did my heel turn and gusset, I did a reinforced heel, just like I do. I think I did it on my other socks as well, just the kind of knit one slip one, not the Eye of the Partridge one, but the typical knit one slip one. And then, you know, classic heel turn and gusset. But when rather than trying to get back to doing an 84 stitch circumference and making those decreases at the gusset to get to the 84 stitches, I did more decreases, I think one more at each shaping point, in order to achieve an 80, no, it would have been two more then, to achieve an 80 stitch foot circumference. So that this point here, as I'm getting towards the ball of my foot, is a smaller circumference than it is on the leg, and therefore it's going to fit that part of my foot better because it's a smaller area of my body. And then yeah, when I did the toe decreases, what I did was I did decreases every second round until I'd I think, what did I do? Oh yes, I remember. So I had my 80 stitch circumference. I decided that the amount of stitches that I wanted to bind off at the toe at the very end when I'm grafting would be roughly a third of the total stitch count. So I think I ended up maybe with a 28 stitch kind of graft, so 14 on each side. I do my socks on magic loop, so 14 each side. So yeah, I think I did that. But when I kind of worked out what a third of 80 would be, I just had to make sure that it worked with a multiple of 4, because you have 4 shaping points in the sock, so in the toe of the sock, sorry. So yeah, I had to kind of mess around with the numbers slightly, but half of those decreases that I needed to make, I did every other round, and then the remaining ones I did every round. So it gives a nice, quite rounded toe shape, which I like. I think I prefer this to the typical wedge toe just because I know anatomically neither are like your foot. But just visually, I prefer the look of a slightly more rounded toe rather than a kind of, what do you call it, like a trapeze shape that you get when you shape it with the wedge style. So yeah, very pleased with them. I have trepidation about like how they're gonna wear. When I put them on, they felt incredible. Like they fit really nicely. There was no kind of straining at any point in the foot. It doesn't feel like there is any strain whatsoever, which I realize is what I experience on my other socks. So that was really interesting, and I felt good wearing them. My fear is that they're going to stretch, which I feel like superwash socks, they are going to. So it'll be interesting to see how they wear, whether they end up feeling super baggy. But as it stands, they stay up, they feel comfy, and I'm going to just kind of wear test them, see how they go. I have got another pair of vanilla socks on the needles now, and I started this morning, I'll tell you more about those. But yeah, I think my kind of new thing is I'm gonna just really try and perfect those numbers for my socks so that I can just whip up a beautifully fitting pair of socks every time. The reason I'm knitting so many socks, and I think the reason why I'm really leaning into like plain vanilla socks, is I have a child who just can't fall asleep on their own at the moment, and the method that we have to use in order to get him to sleep is to sit in his room on a chair, like by the door, whilst he falls asleep. So it's that reassurance that we're there whilst he's falling asleep. But he takes about an hour to fall asleep, and the room is entirely dark. I cannot cope with it. I just can't cope. My brain is slowly like dying in there. Yeah, it's really hard for me. My husband must be some sort of Zen master, because he can sit in there in the dark for an hour and not feel like he's gonna explode. For me, I'm someone who needs to be doing something at all times. And so what I've realized I can do is I can sit in there on the chair, I can have in one ear a podcast playing, a video playing maybe in the background that I can listen to keep my brain occupied, rather than like counting down until I can leave the room. And also I can knit a stockinette sock. I don't need to be able to see what I'm doing when I'm doing a stockinette sock. It's dead easy. And you know, there's a fair few rows to get in there. But as you can imagine, I actually get a lot knitted up in an hour of sitting there in the dark. So I can imagine that I'm going to build up a fair collection of them. But yeah, that's how I'm staying sane in those moments where I'm having to be more patient than I am naturally. So yeah, I have really enjoyed these projects. I enjoyed this yarn. I will be interested to see how it wears in terms of like durability, but it's a merino nylon blend like most of the socks that I knit, so I have high hopes. So before I get into my whips, I thought I would just let you know that my grosgrain slipover is very, very nearly ready to be test knitted. So if it's something that's caught your eye, then make sure you sign up to my test knitters email list, so that when the test knit call comes up, then you will be notified. You'll get an email with all the details, and it'll tell you how to apply. Signing up to my test knitting list doesn't mean that you're like obligated to test knit for me at any point. It just means that you will learn more about the test knit in a good, you know, before the deadline to sign up, and yeah, get the information that you need to make a decision whether you want to actually do it or not. So to give you a bit of an overview of this design, it's a V-neck slipover. The V is not too deep. It's a really nice kind of size for wearing with collars. It's not too deep that you kind of, it's hard to style. It's a really nice depth, or at least it is for me. The construction is not dissimilar to the top that I'm wearing currently, in that you are casting on at the back neck, making increases, and then from that point where you've made that shaping, you're picking up your front shoulders. So it's dead easy. It's knitted from the top down, so it's really easy to make adjustments should you need them at any point. And then yeah, increases are made for the armholes, and then a little cast on under there. The trims are all 2x2 rib and have a really lovely kind of chunky feel to them, a nice deep rib at the hem. What I really like about this pattern is, yes, you can buy yarn maybe for the body of the sweater, but if you have any yarn hanging around from like previous projects, you can use it as a kind of scrap buster for the neck. So the pattern itself recommends knitting for olive merino held with the soft silk mohair. You could totally knit this in just a standard DK weight, DK weight yarn though, and get a really nice finish. And certainly for the trim, don't feel like you have to buy, you know, like a large ball of yarn in order to just do these few rows. Use your stash, use your scraps, and you can get a really nice little detail around the neck. It kind of has that preppy feel without being too fussy, and for me that's like the perfect balance. So yeah, if that's something that interests you, the tester kind of call will probably go up sometime next week. I just need to get my ducks in a row. But yeah, it's a really nice piece, really fun to knit, and I'm excited to see what colours you choose to make up your samples. I always say that test knitting is such a great way for maybe aspiring designers or people who are intrigued in design to kind of dip their toe into the design world. It gives you kind of behind the scenes of the design process. It helps you to look at patterns with a more critical eye because you are providing feedback, and so it's a really good way, if you're not feeling fully confident, to jump into design, to kind of just have a taster of it. It's a really good way to get involved. Now, if you're someone who feels that you are ready to get into design, as I mentioned earlier, I do teach a course called Sweater Design School. It's an online course where I teach knitters how to take, you know, their existing knitting skills and turn their ideas for sweaters into actual patterns. So whether they're designing for themselves, whether they're designing patterns that they eventually want to sell so that others can knit them, I show them the way. So if that's something that interests you, maybe you have dreamed about designing things before and you just have no idea where to start, I want to point you in the direction of a video that you might find helpful. It's kind of like a taster video for everything I teach inside of Sweater Design School. I kind of show you maybe, you know, those hesitations that you have, those things, those fears maybe that hold you back, whether it's that, you know, you don't feel like you're capable of grading, or you're worried that your patterns won't be size inclusive enough. Maybe it's more that you are worried about you know, your originality or creativity. Maybe you're fearful that you might accidentally copy another designer. There are all these things that kind of hold us back from actually like following through on dreams that we have. And in the video I kind of tackle those and I show you how you can move forward from them. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, then yeah, the link to that is below and you can sign up to watch that video now. Okay, now on to whips. This is a brand new design project that I finally cast on. I've had it percolating for a while. I've had the swatch up on my board for a while, and even sketched out and everything, but I've just not been able to cast on the sample yet, and I've finally done it. So let me pop that on the ground. This is the start of what I'm going to call my Murmur sweater. It's a pullover, drop shoulder, really kind of relaxed and chilled. It has a lovely detail going across the back neck and down the shoulders, and it's going to have like a folded trim at the neck. It's going to have like a really kind of loose, oversized feel on the body. The sleeves are going to be relatively loose but also tapered so that they're not flapping around in your dinner and things. And yeah, overall it should be a lovely kind of throw over layer that makes you feel really cozy, almost kind of sweatshirty when you wear it. So I've knitted this up in the Fibre Cirro. It's a lovely yarn. Wow. I've worked with the Fibre in the past, so I can understand if this seems biased or sponsored in some way. It's not. They did provide me the yarn for the yarn support, but the views on it are fully my own. This is an incredible yarn. It feels just amazing. It's a blend of cotton, alpaca, like Cirro alpaca, and merino. And like a mohair yarn, you know, you have the mohair wrapped around the silk core. What you've got here is a cotton core with merino and alpaca wrapped around it. It makes the softest, bounciest, but very, 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 very light fabric. Yeah, incredible. It's fuzzy, maybe rather than like full-on fluff, but that is, I think, a good thing. The stitch definition is not bad. I thought you were going to struggle to see the stitch, and I was slightly nervous about that, but it's not been terrible. Oh, I've just realized I've just dropped a bunch of stitches. Let me sort this out. I'm not even sure why I've stopped this in the middle of the row, but so be it. Oh yeah, I see. So whilst I'm putting those stitches back on, I'm knitting the size 3. It's going to end up with about 30 centimeters of positive ease over the bust. So you can imagine it is a big old sweater. But yeah, I'm really pleased with it. So let's give you a feel for how it's looking so far. So I've done my my upper back. The upper back is knitted down to the bottom of the armholes. And what's interesting about this construction is I cast on and I worked that strip of the kind of ribbing texture. It's actually a version of the type of stitch that I used in my tempo top, but I applied it to the back, upper back, and I worked some short rows on the upper back in order to lift the back neck and kind of drape the shoulders down to create that shoulder slope, and then knitted straight down to the bottom of the armholes. This particular size actually has a small amount of armhole shaping before it's joined at the underarms. Depending on the size that you work, will depend on whether you have armhole shaping or whether you have an underarm gusset, which is basically where you knit the armholes straight down and join without any underarm cast on, and then work some decreases. Basically, the reason why I do that is inspired by Isolde's Inverleith design. I was referred to a blog post about it a few months ago, and it has totally changed the way that I design drop shoulder sweaters, for the better, for sure. It just means that you are not restricted by your bust circumference to have the shoulder drop that you want. And it means that different sizes will use different, slightly different constructions in order to achieve the same overall finish once the garment is complete. Very, very cool. So yeah, this size has the slight underarm shaping. Depending on whether you're knitting a larger size, then you'll be working more underarm shaping. This just means that you don't have like a tiny overhang at the shoulder for like the smaller sizes and a really big one for the larger sizes. It just makes it more consistent and more kind of cohesive across the sizes. So yeah, super pleased with this. It does mean, actually, this construction, it means that the number of rows worked on the back shoulder and the back armhole, sorry, is not very deep, but I'm going to be working considerably more rows on the front shoulder to create the desired armhole circumference. And what that means is that this back detail will not be sitting right on the top of the shoulder. It's going to be dropping back, and it's just going to create a really interesting, beautiful shape. So yeah, super excited about this. And if I could knit on this all day and not have to deal with any of my responsibilities in life, then I would. It's one of those projects that I am just so joyfully excited about. And when I'm knitting on it in the evenings, like on the couch with my husband, I just keep on saying to him, this is so nice, feel the fabric. And he's just like, yes, it feels soft. I'm like, but feel it again, it just feels so good. I'm like, look how light it is, it's barely weighs a thing. and he bless him, he knows how to kind of enthuse along with me, but like I'm really going hard on this. Like I'm really drilling it down. This is an incredible yarn, and I can't stop telling him about it. So yeah, I'm gonna try and get that done. It's gonna be like my primary project whilst I'm working on it. It's gonna be like the primary thing I work on, along with a couple of other things on the side. But yeah, my goodness, what a nice project. I cannot wait to see the finished piece. I think it could be one of my favorites. It just feels really good to me right now. I did put a poll up on Instagram stories. I'm trying to be more active on Instagram at the moment. And I was like umming and ahhing about the colorway that I wanted to do my second sample in, because I do want to use Cirro again for the second sample. Sometimes I kind of do samples in different yarns, but for this one, I am loving Cirro so much. I just want to knit the second sample as Cirro as well. So the color that was selected is one called Pink Planet. It is a very vibrant pink. I think it's going to be so fun. Sometimes it's just nice. Like I have a lot of neutral in my wardrobe. I do have some more like muted colors, but I'm enjoying adding pops of like more saturated brights into my wardrobe at the moment, and so this I can see kind of fulfilling that. And what I'm envisioning is how fabulous is that going to look underneath like my kind of taupey trench coat or my grey charcoal kind of winter jacket. It's going to look amazing. I love the idea of that really vibrant pink popping through. So yeah, genuinely very, very excited about this project, and can't wait to like move it forward. So yeah, that is my Murmur sweater. It will be out in the autumn. I'm aiming for September. We'll see. I'm not keeping to my deadlines as well as I would like at the moment. So just gonna go with the flow and just do my best to get it done sooner rather than later. The next project I would like to tell you about is a new cast on for me. It's my pie camisole by, let me get the name correct, I'm just looking at my notes, by Nabita Joré. I hope that's correct. Please correct me if I have got the pronunciation wrong. This is my lights for knitting on dark yarn. I don't knit with dark yarn, particularly like dark grey, black, things like that, just because it is quite hard to knit, especially in the evening, which is pretty much when I get most of my knitting done. So I have been using my lights to help me knit, and it has been great. So I haven't got much cast on currently. Like I said, it's a newish cast on, and oops, here we go. This is as much as I've got so far. So I think this is maybe like the front panel of my camisole. So it's kind of a high neck, slightly racer style. So it's like racer on the front and back. It was actually not the pattern that I bought this yarn to make. So initially I planned on making, I ummed and ahed about a bunch of different projects. Some of them had size ranges that were just really small, and I didn't really feel great about knitting those projects. So I decided not to work with those patterns. I then found the 9 PM tank, which is beautiful, and I definitely will knit this at some point. So I was going to use this yarn, which is the Knitting for Olive Merino. I was going to use it to make the 9 PM tank. And I was all set to do it. I'd even gauge swatched and everything. But then I was watching Hip Knit Hooray's kind of summer top, I guess like review. And she shared her pie camisole, and I fell in love. It's a really gorgeous design. It's, like I said, it's that racer style, but what I love about it, it's got very deep trims around the neck and also around the arms. It feels very modern. It's got negative ease, which is kind of unfamiliar ground for me. I typically will knit things with some positive ease, even things like this where like I've got it's relatively close fitting over the bust. It does still have like 6 centimeters of positive ease over the bust, so it's kind of slightly unfamiliar territory for me, but I love the design. I think it's going to be gorgeous in like a dark grey. This colour is called Slate. Let me pull it out again so you can see. So yeah, it's a lovely kind of, it's a dark charcoaly grey. It's slightly heathered, so there are tones of kind of lighter grey in there with the darker grey. And I know that I love this yarn. I really love that Nabita Jure has gone in with making it a fine gauge garment. I think sometimes as knitters we are hesitant to work on fine gauges just because it takes longer, you know, it's not as easy on your hands maybe, but for me, for summer garments, 100% I'm more likely to wear the really fine gauge knits than I am to wear my chunkier knits. So this is a very practical option, and I love that Nabita Jure was brave enough to go all in on that finer gauge. And the resulting fabric feels incredible, and I'm really excited to block it as well, because I know that with the merino it really softens up and kind of smooths out once you've blocked it. So we shall see how this goes. Like I said, my Murmur sweater is kind of like my primary project, but I am getting, you know, like a few hours in on this every week, and so we shall see how it grows. I really want to get it done sooner than later, just because the summer in England is very unpredictable and you just never know how long it's going to last. So I do want to make sure that I can actually wear it. The beauty of this though is that it will make a good layering piece, so I'm not overly worried about that. I feel like in the autumn I can layer things over it and it will still look fabulous. So yeah, I'm going to knit this in the grey, and then I can absolutely envision it in like lighter colours, and maybe even like more bright colours. So if this goes well, I can imagine myself maybe knitting another one, probably not this summer because I've got work knits that I need to be working on, but certainly maybe next year if I am pleased with how this comes out. The one thing that I am slightly nervous about is when I looked at the pattern photos, the neck was slightly gapey, so it's got ribbing around the edge, and it kind of, the ribbing forms the straps as well as kind of like finishes the top of the neck, kind of, well, the top of the chest you would call it, and it does gape. It kind of like comes forward slightly like this. It's subtle, but I know it would bug me, and I noticed it on a few like project photos. So if that happens, that's going to be annoying, but I think the way that I would resolve it is probably by running some elastic through it. I've never had to do that before with necklines, but I know that it does work for other knitters, so I'm more than happy to try it and just see if that would resolve anything. Hopefully it won't even happen to me, but if it does, I feel prepared, and that is what I'm intending to do. Alright, so let's move on to my third and final whip. I literally just cast this on this morning. The reason I did that is I knew that tonight is my turn for bedtime. My husband did bedtime yesterday, we alternate it, just so that we at least get a little bit of an evening because, you know, we're coming out of his room at like 9 o'clock, so yeah, it eats into the evening a fair amount. So tonight is my night, and I knew that I'd finished my socks and I needed to have a project that is ready to work in stockinette, like ready for bedtime. So I cast these on. I actually went for an 80 stitch leg for this one, and I'm going to go for a 76 stitch foot, which is 4 stitches fewer than I used on the other socks. But it's really just experimentation for me. I'm not sure how these will compare and if they'll fit better or worse, but I think it's going to be negligible. So either way, I'm going to end up with a wearable pair of socks, but it will be fun to fine tune the fit and see what works best for me. I'm using Wolle in the colour, I want to say it's got numbers for the colour, but I think when I bought it, it was the colour Melon, and it is a really pretty melony pink. When I bought this a little while ago, and the picture of the yarn in on the website was much less saturated and vibrant than this. And so I was quite shocked when it arrived. I actually wondered whether I'd ordered the wrong thing, but it was just the photo. It looked almost like a dusty pink in the photo, so quite different. So I had to put it away and let myself adjust my expectations. But that being said, I do really like the colour, and now that I have started introducing some colours into my socks, then I thought, might as well go all in and do a nice bright pink sock. So I just cast on my 80 stitches. I've worked my cuff of 14 rounds, and then I'm just gonna jump right into my into the leg of my socks. So many rounds of stockinette to go on there. That'll keep me going for a few bedtimes. So yeah, I'm just pleased to have found a solution that works, which means that my kid gets the comfort that he needs, and I don't feel like I'm going to melt and explode with impatience. This keeps me going, and it's actually so fun. At the end of bedtime, I come out and I'm like, oh, look how much I knitted. I got a lot done in there. It makes me feel productive, and I'm not just wasting my time in there, which is never a waste of time, when you're comforting your child, but sometimes it can feel a lot when you're exhausted and just want to go into slug mode on the couch. So yeah, this is keeping me going, so I'm very pleased about that. So that is it for everything that I'm working on currently. I do have some plans for the future, depending on how these projects go, how long they take. I am planning to redesign my split stone sweater. That was actually my first ever design that I released. It's still a love of mine, but it could do with some tweaks. The size range was not remotely inclusive, so that's main priority. Get the sizing good, make sure that it fits a good range of sizes. It's also knitted bottom up, which is not a problem for me, but I know that for a lot of people they do like working top down, so I may convert it to top down as well, and yeah, maybe just give it a bit of a refresh. I think for this one I may use Peer Gynt. I used Peer Gynt for my Eva cardigan, which was maybe an FO in the previous episode or maybe the episode before that, but yeah, I fell in love with the yarn. It is so affordable, and it has great stitch definition, and because of the side panels in my split stone sweater, I do feel like it's going to work really, really well on those side panels. So my thinking is a Peer Gynt split stone sample. Maybe I'll get the opportunity to cast it on, depending on how my Murmur sweater goes, before the next podcast. I also, once I have finished my tank, I did buy some yarn from the local yarn shop to make a hat for my husband. My husband spotted an Oslo hat in a knitting podcast I was watching, and he doesn't normally make requests, to be honest. It's normally I will make suggestions, but this time he was like, oh, I love that hat, can you make me one? So I'm like, coming right up. I've never made the Oslo hat before. I know it's a popular pattern, so I am going to make him one of those. We've got a really nice, I forget what the yarn is that we got in the end. I can't remember, but it's like a kind of army green, I guess. It's quite muted, elements of khaki in there, but it's not brownish, if you get my drift. It's a nice shade, so I'm going to be making that for him, and then of course I'm going to be on my sock knitting train, because I do think I found the solution to my woes when it comes to bedtime: knit socks. So basically I'm going to be knitting as many socks as is needed to get my son to fall asleep. So we'll see how many socks I end up knitting in the gap between now and then. I don't really knit on socks outside of bedtime. Obviously when I'm knitting the cuffs, heel and toe, I need to be able to see what I'm doing. Less so I guess for the cuff, but certainly for the heel and the toe. So those do get done outside of bedtime, but everything else is done during bedtime. But like I said, because bedtime is an hour-long process, you can get a lot done in an hour. So yeah, we'll see how many socks I manage to cast on in the meantime. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly enjoyed sharing everything that I'm working on with you at the moment. Now, let me know, what are you working on as you're knitting this? I know that some of you are sitting there with a cup of tea doing your knitting, or maybe you are getting some household stuff done. That's certainly how I get through household stuff, is I put a nice YouTube video on in the background. But yeah, whatever you're doing whilst you're watching, please let me know in the comments. I really appreciate you, any of the interactions you give me, whether it's comments or liking the video, subscribing to my channel. It just means so much to me. As I mentioned earlier, coming up next week, I do have my tempo top release, so don't miss out on that. And then also there will be that test knit coming up. So just to remind you, if you do want to hear about that, then sign up to the list that I share in the description box. But until then, I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll see you in my next episode. Bye.